Hey guys, Omni here. We're back for yet another breakdown for another episode of Moon Knight. Episode 5 dropped this week. We only have one episode to go, and so far this episode has been my favorite of the bunch, though I don't know how much wiggle room it really gives us to set up the finale and conclude that in the next episode alone. Kind of seems to be a kind of running theme with these Marvel shows. You know, we always end up down to the wire with a whole bunch of threads we need to close off, and I'm hoping that Moon Knight sticks the landing. This last episode was emotional. If you haven't seen my reaction, check it out. This one was just gripping, man. Oscar Isaacs did a fantastic job, and there's a lot of things that I think are still left up to interpretation. And I'm very curious to see what Eric over at New Rockstars has to say about the episode and everything that went down in it, man. Really, there's some dark stuff in there, some tragic things that it touches upon. So I definitely understand some people watching it and feeling a certain way about it. But guys, we're gonna go ahead and dive into this. If you're not subscribed to New Rockstars, go check them out. Give them a go. It's a lot of fun. They stretch sometimes. Don't get me wrong, but they make some entertaining breakdown videos, to say the least. So that all said, guys, let's go ahead and hop into this latest Easter egg and hidden detail breakdown from Eric Voss at New Rockstars. Here we
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Moon Knight Episode 5, which confirmed my underworld theory, but damn, you hate to be right if it means death by sand. Let's break down this heartbreaking and
I don't know why when he said death by sand, my brain was like snoo snoo.
Support New Rockstars by checking out our two
That's immediately where it went to.
Out of these over at newrockstarsmerch.com. Getting this shirt will unlock the added option to write in a custom shout out that will appear at the bottom of our Moon Knight after shows. So we open in the cave as we hear Mark's brother Randall shouting. Now, Randall is the name of Mark's brother in the comics, goes on to carry the monikers of Hatchet Man and Shadow Knight, but not
what?
here. Then
oh
Mark's
no.
mother snaps at him.
It's all your fault.
And don't forget Uncle Frank.
Look what you did, you little jerk.
Now, multiple shots
My
earlier
God.
this season focused on close-ups of dry sand. Of course, foreshadowing the sands they would return to this season, but now in this episode, Steven's corporeal fate. And since those
wow.
sand dunes are depicted as ocean
That is a
waves
nice
that the
loop
boat
back.
passes through, the drowning of Randall foreshadows the drowning of Mark's second brother that he created to help cope with the trauma of losing the first. Then we cut to this goddess of motherhood screaming, which was directly from Mark's screaming mother, from the mother Mark feared, to a physically fearsome mother that actually ends up being the nurturing mother that they really need. Then to Harrow's office, where he has fresh wounds on his nose that were not there at the end of episode 4. Now later, Harrow does deny sedating him, so there is definitely off-the-books violence with the orderlies here. But notice that bandage. Now Mark does have one of these when he talks to Khonshu in the comics that this is based on, but this is also the kind of bandage that you would see on a boxer's broken nose, and Mark in the comics was also a boxer. And I bring all this up because there is still the unseen Jake Lockley altar, the fiercest of.
See, some people mention that in that scene because he flashes out when he grabs that pyramid shaped object on Harrow's desk and starts getting very volatile, to say the least. That some people think that may have been the one moment so far we've seen Jake, because he had a slight bit of an accent as well that was different from the ones we had seen in that moment. I just brushed it off as he was just kind of really getting worked up in the situation. I didn't really think about it any deeper than that in my reaction, but it's plausible, but I don't know. We'll see.
The three, we think in a sarcophagus, rattling like a boxer itching to get into the ring, but is he unseen? Because this altar in this scene seems way more tense and way more confused whenever Harrow calls him Mark. And Oscar Isaac is definitely making different vocal choices here.
You're not a doctor.
They must pay you a lot
Yeah.
of money in this place. You're really good.
They must pay you a lot of money in this place.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
This
I can
episode
kinda see it
started
now
from
for
the
sure.
low-angle point of view of that mom just before she was going to hit him, which might mean that in addition to creating the altar of Stephen Grant on that day, they also might have created the altar of Jake Lockley in that moment to actually take the abuse, which might have led to Jake's extreme violence. So in total, Jake to take the punches, Stephen to think he had a loving mom, and Mark to live with the guilt of it all. So within the subjective afterlife,
God,
of
it just
all of this
gets
shit,
worse.
Mark's organizing principle also created this inner office to represent his self-doubt. So it may be Jake in here, and either way, Jake is left in this psych ward, meaning he still has a chance to reconnect with Khonshu to rescue the others. Then again, in the next scene, Mark retains what Harrow said about organizing principles, so it's not totally clear. Hey, by the way, New Rockstars is
that is a
launching
good
new
point.
daily live stream starting Monday called The Break Room, where those yuckos down at New Rockstars HQ are gonna react to these boss hot takes while interacting with you live. Keep an eye
So
out
they're
for it. It's
basically
fun.
just gonna be
Harrow
roasting
says,
Your brain
his
is a pendulum swinging
theories.
between a very difficult reality that you are my patient here at Putnam Medical Facility in Chicago, Illinois, and a reassuring fantasy that you've created on your own.
Yes, again, the image of the brain swinging like a pendulum, sense, nonsense, parallels the scales of justice, and the way Harrow's staff and the
I'm from a
Lanterns
Putnam
all
area.
swing back and forth. Also,
Originally.
Putnam Psychiatric Hospital is a facility in the Jeff Lemire comics where Mark's father Elias
Not that one,
interns
though.
him after Mark witnessed a Nazi serial killer posing as a rabbi, witnessing this murder being the traumatic event that causes DID. So as hard as it was to
Jeez.
watch the child abuse in this episode, definitely not as dark as that would have been. A clock appears on the back wall, just like the one in the rec room, hands also made of Khonshu's staff shape with a crescent moon tip. And like that one, this clock also does not actually move, but the ticking is still going and is now actually grown louder so that each tick edits the shot to a new frame.
All right, you're doing everything and everything possible not to look within.
And again, my favorite
Man,
set
it's
detail
so-
about
it's
this
done
is
so
that
well,
this set
man.
in the office is the same attic set from Harrow's compound in episode 2, painted over white. And back in that moment, Steven
Oh,
said to Layla,
wow.
Oh my god. I'm going to die in an evil magician's man cave.
Ah, yes, cave. I think they reused that set and that same fear of death and the cave trigger to decorate to this representation of the altar sphere within the Duat. Now, by the way, I love all the visual details that went into Tuaret. Her ears constantly wiggling, especially when she's a little nervous. Her blue fingernail polish, which is the same color as the paint on her chest
Yep.
scarab. And then this is awesome. In the corner mirror that is always behind her, the VFX artists always added her reflection, even showing her back when she turns. Such great attention to detail here. Now she says,
It's been a minute since we've had a soul pass through here.
which is a nod to that rift between gods and man when humans stopped believing in the Egyptian gods, and so naturally fewer people's souls over the millennia would see their afterlife as this Egyptian duat. In addition to the fun animation, I just love the characterization of this
Yeah.
hippopotamus brought to life by Antonia Salib.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it was so adorable. I loved it.
Here we go. Welcome.
Yeah, her nervous apologies, the way she licks her lips, and then when she tries to clear her throat, it comes out like a hippopotamus belch. She declares,
Welcome, gentle travelers, to the realm of the Duat.
This is the afterlife? The afterlife?
An afterlife, not the afterlife. You'd be surprised how many intersectional planes of untethered consciousness exist.
Yeah.
Like the ancestral plane. Oh, just gorgeous.
yes, as I interpreted,
Yes.
this hospital is the subjective underworld of the MCU, in this case called the Duat, much like the way T'Challa and Killmonger's perceptions of the ancestral plane took the forms of an African savannah or an Oakland apartment. And this also suggests that there are countless MCU afterlives that all take various forms. One of them was
Based
likely
on
the
yourself
Soulstone way station that
and
Thanos
your
was
beliefs.
transported to. I'm going to talk
What
about
gods
this a
you
lot more
worship,
in
what
future
you
videos,
believe
because
in
despite
as
claiming
well.
not to connect too much to the MCU,
Really
Moon
interesting.
Knight just contributed more MCU world
Yeah.
building than anything we saw in Hawkeye or the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now also,
Yeah.
those lamps
Yeah.
tilting the
It
hallway
did.
last episode to the sounds of a creaky hull were indeed a sign that this is all aboard a vessel, as we have been speculating ever since we saw that sunken boat in Gus's fish tank. And of course, how Egyptian mythology depicts the underworld passage using
Wow.
similar boat imagery. I love how the sky of this underworld is purple.
God damn,
also reminiscent
dude.
of the ancestral plane when T'Challa first enters it. Frozen in the sand are past guilty souls, also kind of reminding us of the scattered, pruned figures of the void. The bow of this boat has a Tuaret statue, and a smaller one is aboard the rudder. Tuaret and Stephen explain that they are headed toward the Aru, the Field of Reeds, the heavenly paradise from Egyptian mythology, only accessible if their heart's weight balances with the feather of truth. to where it pulls their hearts from their chests. Another Indiana Jones reference, by the way, Temple of Doom there. But their hearts are white as stone. Maybe because Disney Plus does not want a bloody pulsing organ, but also reflects how Khonshu is currently encased in stone Ushabti form. But these scales are held by Anubis, who in Egyptian mythology is the true purveyor of justice, standing before Ammit, unlike Harrow's scales tattoo, which shows Ammit's croc heads holding the scales. Mark suggests to kill the hippo, steal the boat, and head back inside
Yeah.
to try to balance their souls. Each room now containing a dark.
I do like, because it throws me off a little bit, because I've talked about this quite a few times before, that, you know, when we saw Harrow summon those jackals, those Anubai, that, you know, it had the same kind of dark energy kind of look that we saw with like Dormammu, like we saw with the Dweller in Darkness, like we've seen with Agatha and stuff like that. But then, you know, there was always that kind of outlier that we kind of have brought up with the ancestral plane, with the heart fruit from Black Panther, where that's more of like a spiritual thing that draws their power on it. So maybe those powers connect not to the dark energies of the world, but a more spiritual energy, because here as well, it's not the ancestral plane, but the sky is still cloaked in that dark, luminous purple. Another detail too is there's light shining through it here that cracks into like a kind of like an orange, kind of like Shang-Chi's bracelets when it shifts between, you know, his father and him. You know, it's that shift in color, like there's this balance and weaving between the energies of the world. But then again, we don't know if those are cosmic or if they are tied to something more mystical as of yet, because they talked about trying to distinguish the technology of it all, but it maybe is another technology that we don't understand that connects all these things together. I don't know. It's just like something like I've been thinking about a little bit, like throughout this, and since we've seen this episode, is like the connections and ties, because colors are very prominent in what they're trying to represent within the MCU. So I was like trying to keep an eye out for that, because there's a lot of repeating themes and different kind of abilities, and a lot more so when we get into like the more mystical and spiritual elements of the MCU. So I don't know, just wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Dark memory from their past. Kind of like the memory elevator of Inception, but also a lot like in WandaVision, another series that spends its penultimate episode going down memory lane. We see the museum bathroom from episode 1, and across the hall from that, Steven's memory of rewinding the stars in episode 3 with Khonshu, that room labeled treatment room, this being the traumatic moment they lost Khonshu. But the third room is actually labeled with the QR code for the floor map, and when you scan this, it actually takes you to the comic issue of Moon Knight #1 of 1980, the first solo issue of the Moon Knight character, showing his origin story with Bushman. Literally, the floor map of this hospital is Mark's origin story. Mark brushes off the memory of him standing on that street outside his mother Shiva, but Steven knows only their darkest, most unresolved moments are being kept here. And in the cafeteria are Mark's victims from his time as Khonshu's avatar, all of their canopic jars on the tables in front of them.
They were criminals, murderers, predators, the worst of the worst.
Yeah, thankfully the camera is not on Mark when he says predators, because I would not want to be the actor labeled predator in this episode, or ever. But also among these victims is Randall, whom Mark does still feel guilt for killing. It's interesting how Randall is able to move around, meaning that all of these other corpses are also mobile. Just creepy to think how they're all just sitting here listening, waiting to make their move. Steven follows Roro to the memory of the barbecue with her mother Wendy and their father Elias.
Come check out my drawing. He drew the fish with only one fin.
Mark, be nice to your little brother.
Yeah, I love the blocking with Oscar Isaac and Carlos Sanchez, who plays young Mark. Incredible performances from both of them this episode, as they both turn to look back at the mom and then back at their brother, synced. Randall's drawing of the fish, of course, reflects Gus's Nemo fin, and the way poor Randall will end up unable to swim, similar to how Gus perished outside of Steven's
I didn't even
memory.
think about
Steven
that.
woke up to him just replaced.
No,
Young
that's so
Mark says,
sad.
Gators, gators. A wild crocodile.
showing the origin of Steven's sign-off with his mom.
Oh,
he always
yeah.
said that to her, but never heard her loving response. And of course sets up Mark's showdown with the croc mouth of Ammit.
God damn,
Mark and
man, there's
Randall
so many,
venture
like,
into a
bookending
cave,
moments.
And Steven follows, stepping on Khonshu-looking bird bones. That could explain why Khonshu takes a skeletal form in Mark's eyes, when in Egyptology, Khonshu has a living bird head. The brothers say,
I'll be Rosser, though. Can you hear that, Dr. Grant? I sure do, Rosa. Sounds to me like danger.
Yes, Rosser is the name of Dr. Grant's young sidekick, Toonbuster being a movie that these brothers must have watched together, and Roro being his nickname probably came from Rosser, and him doing the British accent is likely what inspired Mark to start doing that voice to escape his mom. As Steven pushes into the flooding cave, the sounds of water also play over the shots of Mark in the psych ward. But we never see the boys inside of the cave, and we never see young Mark escaping it. Yes, there are lots of rules about filming child actors in water. It's generally not a safe thing to do, but you can also interpret this metaphorically. Mark entered Plato's allegory of the cave and never came back out. He never reached true enlightenment. He just remained chained up in that cave, only able to perceive reality as deceptive shadows on the wall. But then Mark enters
That is a good way to
the Shiva
interpret
for
it,
his
too.
brother. Now, a Shiva is a Jewish funeral service for a close family member, and I really love that they included the detail of the mirror being covered in this green sheet, because it's customary to cover mirrors in the Shiva household so that the mourners focus less on themselves and solely on the deceased. But this also reminds us
really?
of Mark's partially covered mirror in his hotel room at the end of episode 2, a shot that also prominently featured his Star of David necklace. Mark tried to cover that mirror, but the sheet slid off. Throughout the series, his mirror reflection has been what's haunting him everywhere, now reflecting how he's truly unable to mourn. The staircase that Steven goes up has actually been seen in the closing credits to every episode, and now we know why. Birthday after birthday, it's a powerful representation of the torment that his mother put him through. We start with Elias and Mark blowing out the candles together, but framed behind them in the middle is that wet bar with the decanter of booze. Now Steven goes up again, but just finds himself back on that same floor. Impossible to escape the cycle of abuse. And now on this birthday, the decanter is in Wendy's hand. Hey, pro tip, if someone is walking around with a glass of booze in one hand and the full bottle in the other, just waiting to refill it, there is a problem. And poor teenage Mark finally just has to leave this house. Actually, behind Mark in the scene is this poster showing someone falling down a hole, as this whole episode shows Mark and Steven descending deeper and deeper into memory. Mark and Steven tumble onto the dig site incident.
Turns out going AWOL in a fugue state gets you discharged from the military. Didn't have a ton of options after that, so I went work for hire for my old CO Bushman.
Yes, referring to Raoul Bushman, Mark's mercenary partner in the comics turned villain, responsible for the death of Marlene's archaeologist father, or in this case, Layla's father. Mark recounts how he tried to help this dig team escape, but ended up getting shot himself and had to crawl into the tomb of Khonshu. Now notice how the moon overhead is now in its waning crescent phase. The crescent shape, meaning Khonshu's power is rising. We can also see this same phase of the lunar cycle in the episode 5 credits, which have been changing episode to episode. So Mark nearly offs himself here, as we saw Jake try to do earlier with that paperweight, but Khonshu stops him.
What a waste.
Huh?
Now it's interesting, you could actually interpret everything that happened in Mark's life after this point as the judgment journey of a man within the moment of his suicide. Which, by the way, my hot take for Liam Neeson in The Gray. Think about it. Khonshu says,
You're mine.
I'm not seeing the gray.
I feel it. Fractured. Broken. Most fascinating. You are a worthy candidate to serve me during this time.
yes, so Khonshu didn't possess Mark in spite of his DID, but actually preys on him because of it. And there's a really quick subtle shot here. As Mark first drifts closer to death, he looks up at the statue and briefly we see Khonshu's actual hand and staff before that statue. Just a way of showing how Mark is already beginning to allow that deity into his heart. And Mark consents.
Then rise and live again. As my fist of vengeance. As my Moon Knight.
Yes, the first and so far only time Moon Knight has been spoken on this show. Another parallel to WandaVision episode 8, which ended with Agatha saying Wanda's superhero moniker for the first time in the MCU.
But that makes you the Scarlet Witch.
And I like how various colors flicker across Mark's face during this transformation, showing the supernatural power inhabiting his flesh, as well as giving him this cool suit. Back on the deck, baboons scatter. Now, baboons actually play an important role during the Duat process, carrying out Thoth's duties as the god of measurement as the heart is weighed on the scales. Baboons also guard the gate of the underworld. Tuaret says,
Fear is spreading in the upper world. Unbalanced souls are being judged and condemned to the sands before their time. Oh, this is bad. This is evil.
Yes, souls plummet into the sand at an alarming rate, meaning Harrow
the souls
must have
are purple
freed
too.
Anna from her Ushapti and
You
is
didn't
now
really
wreaking
notice that.
havoc on the world. I cannot wait to see this judgment process upstairs because Amit is depicted
souls
as a
are just
ferocious croc-headed beast with the front half
purple
of a lion
in
and the back
general.
half of a hippo. Tuara and Khonshu are about 10 feet tall, but could Amit be like a freaking bus-sized monster pouncing through the streets of Cairo, eating anyone who smells evil?
Dude,
Or
that would
is
be
Amit's
fucking
judgment
epic.
A remote process that opens up purple underworld portals beneath the feet of rotten egg souls like Veruca Salt. Is that what that poster behind Teenage Mark was referring to? Whatever it is, it's gonna be wild. They're able to convince Tuara to steer them back toward Osiris's gate, and Steven snaps at Mark.
If Layla dies, that's on your head. It'll be all your fault.
No, you can't! I won't do it! I won't do it! You can't play me!
Yes, Steven accidentally speaks Wendy's torment words, and Mark finds himself back in Harrow's office. His face no longer injured, just even more evidence that the altar in the first scene of this episode was not Mark or Steven. Here, Harrow asks the core question of the series.
Do you think you created Steven to hide from all the awful things you feel you've done in your life? Or do you think Steven created Mark to punish the world for what your mother did to you?
This really is the chicken or the egg argument of the series. Who created whom? How far back did this really go? Ultimately, I think we did start with Mark. I just like how this show casts just enough doubt on the reliability of his perception. And we return to the awful day. It begins with a close-up on the table as Mark swipes the action figures of Dr. Stephen Grant and Rosser. But really, would these, like the Tomb Buster poster, truly exist as merch in the MCU for a little seen knockoff direct-to-VHS movie? Also, considering this is the same universe of actually real IP as Ned Flanders and The Simpsons, Finding Nemo, and both Avatars. Not to mention, on the other wall of this room is the movie poster for the 1977 Star Wars. Also on Mark's side table are a pair of nunchucks and a wooden scale, showing how even in this memory, Mark and Steven's souls are still being judged. And behind Mark, on the other side of that room, is a Chicago Cubs banner, as well as Randall's fish drawing, when we clearly saw Randall finishing coloring in the fin as orange on the day of his death. And we see the moment that young Mark first creates the Steven altar.
Bloody hell. Look at the state of this place. Better sort it out before Mum sees it.
And folks, according to clinical research, this is how DID manifests in patients. Often a traumatic childhood memory. In this case, we learned that it was Mark willing into existence an alter who did not have to have this abusive woman as his mother and might instead have a mother that actually loves him. Steven notices the Tomb Buster poster tagline, "When danger is near, Stephen Grant has no fear." Also in that poster, you can see the split bust of the Aztec moon deity Coyolxauhqui now side-eyeing them. But the poster credits are filled with Easter eggs. Timely Atlas Studios, Timely Atlas being the original name of Marvel Comics. Doug Perlin is a version of the Moon Knight creators Doug Munch and Don Perlin. Melissa Russell is the wife of writer Jeremy Slater. Dylan Beck is the assistant production coordinator on the show. Wyatt and Dylan Curtis, probably related to the producer Grant Curtis. Colleen Straselowitz is the wife of Nick Pepin, whose own name cameoed back in episode 2. Carmel Benson is probably related to director Justin Benson. Amy Stewart is a partner to director Aaron Moorhead. Nor Iqbal Molvi is married to the writer Sabir Pirzada. And I assume the other names are just loved ones for other staff and crew. Wendy moves in to abuse her son. But again, this must not have been Steven at the moment of the abuse, otherwise he would have remembered it. So I truly do think that the altar present for all those beatings really could have been Jake. Steven returns to Harrow's office where he sees Harrow's diploma. This thing just
I wondered
says
why he
graduate
doesn't
diploma
remember
in
any of those
psychology.
moments, but it
No
was definitely him
university
in that
listed,
one.
No signature, only that he graduated December 13, 2011. Yeah, it's a fake.
Oh.
Steven makes another pop culture reference.
It's so strange. Little haircut, little silly tash there. It's very Ned Flanders.
Yeah, the visual totally tracks, but also Ned Flanders is known as Springfield's dogmatically faithful true believer, as Harrow is for Amit. Oakley dokley neighborino. Harrow arranges to call Steven's mom.
Hey, Dylan. Yeah, could you call Mrs. Grant, please?
Yes, Dylan is the name of Steven's tour guide date, now coming back here as the receptionist of this facility. But Steven doesn't want the call to go through because he knows that there will be no one at the other end of that call, just as there wasn't for any of his calls, just the dial
It's
tone.
so fucking sad.
Now, no call was actually made here, of course. This was just Steven finally facing his own truth. At Wendy Spector's Shiva, Mark stands outside in front of the Watterson Food and Liquor, a nod to executive producer Trevor Watterson. Mark walks off and collapses, smacking his yarmulke, but then cradles it. Yes, this violent act makes him see his yarmulke as his brother.
gonna
but he still
cry
feels
again.
guilt for harming. And for a second, it seems like he's looking directly into Steven's eyes, but he's actually reverting into his Steven alter.
Hey, Mum. Hey, you all right? Yeah, would you believe it? I am totally lost again. I don't know where I am.
If you look closely, his phone screen shows that he is not actually on a call. Mark confirms this happened 2 months prior, and his mom's death in Sheva was that inciting incident behind his recent struggle to keep Steven at bay. Steven helps Mark start to forgive himself.
It wasn't your fault.
And upon this, we return to another upside-down overhead shot, matching Steven entering the museum in episode 2 as they join Tawaret back on the deck as they approach the gates of Osiris. But the scales still have not balanced, so Mark's past victims crawl up from the sand. Mark punches one of their faces off, but he's still pushing back, even faceless. Steven grabs a rudder to knock them off their balance, then hits them with that bat.
I prefer cricket.
Yeah, 6 is what you yell when you've scored in cricket, but really just as Steven did as a kid with those spilled pencils, it's left to Steven to clean up Mark's messes. Steven makes the ultimate sacrifice, tackling the last one down into the sand, stranding him in the Duat, Bing Bong style, all foreshadowed by that goddamn
Bing
kid.
Bong.
And did it suck for you? Getting rejected from the Field of Reeds?
Well, that don't make sense, because I'm not dead, am I?
Stevie.
Am I?
And so Steven turns into a sand
He
sculpture.
got rejected from the Field of Reeds.
Mark. And his hand reaching out in the same gesture and pose that Crawley freezes himself in. I truly hope that Steven isn't gone forever. Like if the Ennead or any higher power rules that Amit's premature condemnation of all those reigning souls was unjust, it's totally possible that Steven could be part of a divine retraction and could definitely rejoin his altars in the living world. And again,
We'd like to refund all these souls.
Is still in that psych ward, and if Tawaret can make her case to Osiris, the best warrior of these 3 altars can take Harrow and Amit to the mat. But whether by tragic coincidence or because Mark no longer needs his Steven altar to escape his trauma, those scales now finally balance, and Mark is moved to the Aru. It's an immediate and smooth transition, as if he was there the whole time, just waiting for that amber sunlight to beam through those purple clouds. Now earlier, Tawaret likened the underworld to the ancestral plane, and this Field of Reeds definitely resembles a paradise where T'Challa's ancestors beckon him to join them, but with the sunlight and the tall plants, it also evokes the garden, Thanos' pastoral retirement. But ultimately for Mark, this is not a paradise, it is hell, because he knows he does not belong here. The music we hear is Más Allá del Sol, sung by Manuel Bonilla and Santiago Stevenson, a Spanish hymn sung at funerals in Mexico and throughout Latin America, maybe a nod to Oscar Isaac's Guatemalan and Cuban ancestry, but the lyrics translate to beyond the sun, I have a home, home, beautiful home, meant to convey how in your present life you might be poor and lost, but in heaven, paradise awaits. Unfortunately for Mark, it is not the sun that he connects with, it's the moon. Actually, just as the opening shot of this episode cuts from something Mark feared to something he wanted, an abusive mother to an understanding mother, the closing shot now cuts the same way. From the sunny Field of Reeds, something he doesn't want, to the closing title card, that same Field of Reeds, but with the correct crescent moon shape, overseeing it all. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EAVoss, follow New Rockstars, subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching, bye.
Oh my lord, dude. I'm like fighting off tears again with this. And this is just the breakdown, man. I don't know. Like there's so much beautiful poetry in this show. Some of it, sure, maybe it's just connecting dots and maybe weren't there intentionally, but there's so many small details that just loop back around and make this so much more tragic. Oh my God, dude, Steven. Oh, fuck. I adored this episode, man. All of it, every bit of it. And yeah, I am starting to think that maybe Jake is just left out of this whole thing, because there are like little things throughout the episode that definitely left gaps in both Mark and Steven's memories, you know, dude, I don't know, man. It's just crazy, man. It's so good. How detailed and structured this is, how many things just kind of repeat and pay off. And a lot of it's just in the background, like little details that foreshadow greater things to come down the line. It's just, I don't know, man. I think this show so far has done that way better than any of the other ones. This is a pretty strong contender. If it closes out in episode 6 strong, which I still have some apprehension because it does still feel like we got a lot to wrap up in just one episode. But if they pull it off, this might knock WandaVision out for my favorite episode or show that they've made so far. I think it's just like, I don't know, it just fuck, man, it just breaks my heart and soul, man. It just makes you think, ponder, and empathize so strongly with these characters, man. There's nothing in this, as far as like he said, that I want to contend or push back on or whatever. I feel like he was pretty spot on. Maybe like there was a little meaner stretch here and there, but I felt like he made really strong arguments for damn near everything that was presented in this one. I mean, this episode was just a work of art. Yeah, man, I'm struggling to form words at the moment because, like, I feel like this breakdown honestly made the episode way more tragic than I even acknowledged or picked up on, because there's, like I said, just so many little cues, little nods, little details in the background, in the sets, in the transitions into the positioning, the framing, like everything breaking down in this episode is something that's kind of came full circle from somewhere in the beginning, and it's just like, it just, holy shit, man. And Steven, I've adored from the get-go. He's just a sympathetic character, man. He sure, like in the middle area there when he was being very combative with Mark in situations where it definitely seems a little off to like not just kind of satiate Mark a little bit, humor him in situations like where Steven was clearly making things worse. It all came from a place that is completely understandable from that point of view, which I think is a good way to like start this whole character journey off, is why they chose to start off from Steven's perspective. This is really well done, man. Because then you have a character to sit back behind, and he's also kind of our eyes and ears, our avatar into this world, since he's unaware of everything else going on, their origin, the truth, Mark, for the earlier parts of everything that's been happening. Damn, man. Some real fucking thought went into this show. And I do think that, thankfully, I think one of the things that's helped this show too is that I highly doubt there was any changes, meddling that happened within this as it was coming out. Obviously, with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, WandaVision, and Loki all had things reshuffled around because the pandemic really fucked them over in what the release order, which ones were going to come first. Some movies came out before they were intended to, and they had to reshape things. Things were cut. Some things were just not figured out while they were shooting, which is just problematic to begin with. But this one, it had the benefit of being completely disconnected from setting up really anything else. It wasn't anything that this was going to pay off or set up is down the line. You know, I think the closest thing might be Blade, maybe Doctor Strange. I don't know. I doubt it, but I feel like, you know, there's some concepts and ideas in this one that allowed it to kind of flow freely, while the other ones were always in this kind of like swirling whirlpool of change. So that might be part of it. Who knows? Maybe that's just because we haven't heard about any of the changes in the background. At least I haven't. But I think it's running pretty smooth right now. It's just, I think that this last, I don't know how they wrap it up in one episode, man. They got to free Khonshu. They got to save Steven. They got to do a lot of shit, man. They got to stop Harrow, Amit. Will we see Amit? Will we have time to see Amit? I don't know, man. And it's just because I'm so like wrapped up in this. I wish we had like more episodes, man. I really do. Anyway, guys, what did you think of this breakdown? What did you think of the episode? What are your theories? What are you leaning towards on a lot of the things that were covered here in this video? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Please follow New Rockstars if you're not already. And guys, feel free to join our Discord. We can talk about things there as well. Links to that on my socials down below. Before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends, Manny Share, Ryan, Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, Yori, Corey Scott, Margaret, Grace, Mary, Bradley, Nate, Proudy, and Melita. Thank you guys, as always, for your continued support. But It's another breakdown down, and I'll see you guys next week for the finale. Take care, everybody.